Welcome to How to Sell More. Today, we are talking about why you need to be less forgettable. Less forgettable for your prospects, less forgettable for your customers, less forgettable for the vendors and partners that you work with, the people that you count on. And what does it mean? Well, I think too often there's someone in front of us, there's someone we're working with, there's someone that we want something from. And so we give them a lot of time, we give them a lot of attention, and then we go off on our merry way. They go off on their merry way. Life gets busy, work gets busy, but really we're focused on the next thing. And meanwhile, time slips by and we miss our opportunity to keep that relationship going. We become forgettable. And so today's guest, David Wachs, who is an entrepreneur with a seriously cool focus on innovation. He's going to break down the power of handwritten notes. Now, why would David be an expert in this? His company, Handwritten, has combined programming with AI, with robotics, to be able to produce up to 10,000 handwritten by robots, handwritten notes every single day. In this episode, we talk about some really strategic, really tactical ways to use handwritten notes, to use them at scale. We talk a bit about his product, a bit about his service, but this isn't really about handwritten. This is about the power of making those connections, keeping the fires burning, let's say, and being able to really show people that we thank them and that we care and that we're grateful for the time we're spending with them. And frankly, we got so much out of this episode that when I was reviewing this with the team, there were a few people on my team who were like, we got to do some of these things. We got to implement some of these strategies, because they're things that personally we did years ago that we've kind of stopped doing. I've kind of felt like technology and email and text and SMS and all these other things kind of have taken its place. But truthfully, I've always used handwritten notes very sporadically, and I know they have a huge impact. And I want to do that more. And you probably want to do that more as well. And so we're going to break that all down in today's episode. Now, another reason why David is a pretty awesome entrepreneur to listen to and to learn from, and what you'll hear, he has a ton of research and a ton of data to back this. But he's led a few different organizations, including he pioneered a mobile marketing platform. He invented a concept of a mobile CRM that gained recognition as one of America's fastest growing companies. And so if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a marketer, if you're a leader, and you are looking, heck, if you're someone out on the job hunt who's looking to make a deeper connection with someone you want to influence, you've got to hear today's episode. So I am Mark Drager. With that, let's get into it. So David, when I started in business back in 2006, I remember meeting an entrepreneur who had gone through some kind of real estate training. And I don't know the training, but she said, you have to write, I don't know what it was, 10 thank you cards per day. Yeah. Write 10 thank you cards per day, handwritten cards, and send them out. And I was never that disciplined, honestly. But along the way, when I hit my 5th anniversary for my company, I picked 5 people that deeply impacted my success. And I wrote out handwritten letters and I sent them to everyone. And honestly, the feedback I got just from, it took time and it took effort. And my writing is bad and my hand hurt afterwards because I'm used to typing. Yeah. But the impact it had was profound. It was like the thought of a handwritten note today in the world of people barely typing things out grammatically correct in text or in email is massive. Is that why you do what you do?
That's exactly it. So prior to Handwritten, I ran a company called Sell It. We'd send 1 million text messages a day for big brands like Abercrombie and Fitch, Toys R Us, some up in Canada. And I realized, and this was back I sold it in 2012. I realized that I was part of the noise, at that point, and it's only gotten worse. Every office worker was getting 135 emails a day. And then you add in and so that took them about 24% of their time just to manage their email inbox. Then you add in the thousands of texts they get a month, Slack, Teams, all that, and they're just inundated with electronic communication. But the least used inbox is the one at the end of their driveway. It's their mailbox, especially handwritten communication. They get a lot of junk mail, but as far as handwritten notes, the average consumer only gets between 1 and 3 a month. And that's if they're lucky. So do you want to be in that pile of 135 emails a day, or do you want to be in that pile of maybe 3 handwritten notes a month, right? So that's kind of what we help people do. And it really does work. I mean, we have a piano tuner. He tunes your piano. He then doesn't have to see you for a year. But in that time, he sends you a thank you note for tuning your piano. A year later, when he arrives, that handwritten note is often standing up on the piano. So not only is it opened, not only is it read, but it's kept on display. And I'm sorry, none of my million text messages a day have ever been printed out and stuck to a piano. I bet none of anybody else's email has done that either.
So before we get into, because normally when we have a guest on, we don't talk so specifically about their company, but you have a really unique company, and this is a really great tactic. So I want to get into the specifics of how we build lists, how we scale it, how we do this. But before we move into that, let's just talk, if we can, about the impact of taking the time to give something to someone where it's clearly thoughtful. One of the guys I really love, Steve Sims, a great marketer, an experiential kind of guy, wrote a great book, Blue Fishing. And he's talked about the fact he would be at a restaurant and he would take the bar bill or he would take the restaurant bill and on the back grab a Sharpie and write, "I was thinking of you." And then he would like mail that to a client. Or right, it's weird.
I think of you when I'm drunk.
Or like, "I wish you were here. By the way, I had this great meal." And it's so weird. It's so strange. As you mentioned, it's so different. And so, like, can we just talk, I guess, about the impact of these thoughtful, before we get into scalability, just the impact of these thoughtful moments and what that can mean for the relationships that you're trying to dig deeper into? Yeah.
So I'm reading, oh my God, it's called something like Unapologetic Hospitality or something like that. And they quote, and what resonated from that book to me is they quoted Maya Angelou. And Maya Angelou once said, "People don't remember what you say. People don't remember what you did. They remember how you made them feel." And that's what we do, is we help people feel appreciated. And that's got tremendous impact. And I'm not here to sell my service. I'm here to sell handwritten notes in general. But if you visit our website, which is Handwritten with a Y, HANDWRYTTEN, there's a resources tab and there's a consumer survey you can download. And what we did was we surveyed 2,000 consumers, not related to our service, just blind consumers. And we asked them if they currently felt appreciated by the brands they work with. And by and large, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but by and large, people said no. They don't feel appreciated by the brands they work with. And then we said, okay, well, if you felt appreciated by a brand, what would you do? And of course, it's obvious stuff. I would buy more. I would buy higher ticket items. I'd refer more. I might post to social media, that type of thing. And then we said, what would make you feel appreciated? And of course, handwritten notes were at the very top of the list. Strikingly, handwritten notes are not the most according to them, not the most personal form of communication. That would be phone calls. But phone calls also run the highest risk, according to them, of being annoying. So if you're trying to walk the line between not being annoying and being highly personal, handwritten notes are a great way to go. And all we do as a company is we help you scale that. So, when you get to the point where you can't write those 10 a day, call us and we'll help you with that.
Let's get into that in a second. I was thinking about speaking to you and some of the impact that these types of strategies have had on me. I can remember back when my wife and I first got married. We're going back to maybe 2005, 2006 now. We left one of our telecom companies. So up here in Canada, we have like Rogers and we have Bell. We have Rogers and Bell. And so it's like you're either with Bell and then you switch to Rogers because it's cheaper, or you go from Rogers to Bell and back and forth.
Right.
And at the time, we had just switched because the service was bad or something. I got a card, part of a win-back campaign. I got a card that I'm sure was an automated card, and I'm sure it was printed because even 2006 you could do that. But it was from like the senior VP of customer experience. And all it said was, "We're sorry you left. Do you think there's anything that we can do to win your business back? And if so, could you let us know?"
Right.
And that card actually started the conversation, because I wrote back and I was like, well, these were all the problems. And they said, well, we could fix it and we could do this and we could do this. And it started the conversation. It started on the win back side. And we ultimately did switch back. But I remember that because I was like, damn, did the card trick me? Did the card, I was trying to analyze what happened. And my friend, my entrepreneurial friend who writes 10 thank you cards per day and sends them out and has done it for years religiously, has even told me stories where if you're doing this consistently, you're like looking for opportunities to either thank someone or send them a note and say, I see you, I see what you're doing, I see how hard you're working.
Yes.
And so and so you're open to that. But she lost a really big pitch. She came in second place and got a note saying, I'm sorry, we're going with someone else. And she wrote a thank you card to them. She said, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you so much that I was able to do this. And this time it didn't work out, but perhaps next time it would. And when that person got the thank you card, they actually pulled the contract from the awarded person and they switched back to her because they said, no one does this. No one does this. And so this is what, Handwrytten does. Tell me what if we want this, like if I want I want to give people great experiences, what do I need to do? Obviously, I have to have names. I have to have, I guess, addresses. Like, what do I need to be able to do this at scale?
Well, so we use, just the way we do it is we use robots to help people write handwritten notes. We have 175 robots. We build them ourselves. It's completely proprietary technology. As far as what we need, hold on.
You have robots like, because I've seen some of them in the past for legal signatures and stuff, but you have like a robot that holds like inkjet pens and it.
Not inkjet.
Okay.
Pilot ballpoint pens like you pick up at your Shoppers Drug Mart in Canada or CVS in the States.
I love how we have lots of American listeners. It's cool.
Yeah. So you have
robots holding some big pens, basically.
Pilot G2. Yeah, I want to be clear. Pilot is actually now a partner of ours. We started with Pilot because their pens, for our purposes, we found a nice, good rolling, thick, bold point. And now we use so many of them that they're like, hey, we want in on this. And now they're a partner of ours. But Pilot G2 pens, you can pick them up at any drugstore. And they're all written out longhand. So it's not inkjet, which is important because the physical impression a pen makes on paper is there. It's also, pens kind of follow the contour of the bumpy page a little different than inkjet, which would be more uniform. And then finally, the ink smears, which inkjet might too, but the ink smears if you rub it with your finger or, lick your finger and rub it, that type of thing. And all that matters to people. So what we are is kind of a full service shop. First, we print out a card to your dimensions and your liking, and then we write on it, then we mail it for you. But as far as your question goes, if you're a realtor, and we do work with real estate agents, we have a prospecting feature where you could circle an area on a map, unfortunately only in the United States, but you can circle an area on a map or geofence an area on a map and then set parameters like send everybody in this area that meets certain revenue income criteria or net worth criteria or who's lived in their house a certain length, that type of thing. And then we'll pull that data from a reputable data source and automatically send handwritten notes to them. If you're a business and you're looking to do local prospecting, we can do the same thing. We tie into the same company, but now we're pulling based on SIC codes, which are a way to classify standard industry classification codes, a way to classify, I want to target all attorneys or mining, whatever it is, right? Like it runs the gamut. You select them and then we can send cards to them. Or if you're not doing prospecting, and that's kind of the use case there, if you're doing something more where you have a relationship in place, you can obviously upload lists of addresses, or we could tie directly into your system. So if it's a Shopify e-com store, we could tie into that. If it's Salesforce, we're in the App Exchange. If you're a nonprofit, we tie into Blackbaud, which is the number one nonprofit management system. So we tie into all these commonly used systems to make the system super easy for you to use. That's the idea.
I'd love to know a few use cases because you mentioned obviously prospecting.
That's actually our least frequent.
Yeah, I imagine customer retention or customer engagement would be the main focus. So
yes.
Are there some typical ways? I'm thinking like, every time an invoice goes out, can it trigger like an automatic handwritten card to thank someone, or like what are some use cases people are using on the customer engagement side?
Yeah, typically it's you don't want to overdo it. So it's 2 to 4 touch points a year, typically for sale or threshold sale. So in other words, after they spend a certain amount of money or make their third purchase, you can send them a handwritten note. But we always recommend after first purchase because, I hate to break it to people, none of us are snowflakes. There's other products or services out there just as unique as us that they can choose from. And in the day and age of the internet, you can find anything anywhere. If I don't like your service, I can have somebody in Asia or, the Philippines come up with it. So I say, take the time to genuinely think, whether using our service or just sit down and write it on your own, write a thank you note for the opportunity to work with them, just like your realtor friend did. And then birthdays, holidays are natural touch points. We just came out of our busiest holiday season. And then maybe one other touch point a year, which is kind of a grab bag. It could be an offer. It could be a, hey, haven't heard from you, anything like that, just to keep them engaged. But blind prospecting can be very expensive. So I think the best use case for this is really known relationships. For instance, we work with a lot of car dealerships. We tie into their dealer management systems. And then after a purchase, we send a handwritten note. After an oil change, we send a handwritten note. Birthday card, Christmas, rinse and repeat.
Is there a certain either average dollar value or lifetime value of client that would determine whether this is worth the investment or not?
I think for prospecting, you'd have to think about that. The cost of a card, thanks to USPS and Canadian Post postage, can be over $4 if you're doing small volume. On larger volume, it falls drastically. So you really have to think about if it's worth it. But, these days with the price of, we do a lot of real estate, with the price of real estate being where it is, or the price of a car being where it is, or if you're a donor and you just gave a $50 donation, don't you think they deserve a thank you for doing that? So really anything, I'd say you should start thinking about this, anything over $50 probably. I'd see the value propositions there. I mean, we have stats that show this increases lifetime value 10 to 20%. It increases response rates to prospecting offers 27x compared to print. We see coupon redemption rates 3 to 5 times greater than emailed coupon codes. So, the results, the opportunities are there. It's just, to your point, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to overdo anything. You don't want to overdo email. You don't want to overdo text. You have to know where to apply the right thing. You know what I mean? So it's just one more tool for you to use.
What do they say? Everything in moderation, including moderation?
Correct. Yes. Including moderation. I like that.
I think, I don't know. I'm listening right now to the biography of George Washington, and I think I heard it in that. So this is probably something going back a few hundred years.
It's interesting. Canadians seem more interested in the United States than Americans are in some way.
I've spent the last year, I mean, this is now a tangent, but I've spent the last year pretty deep diving into the founding fathers' biographies. And I love Ron Chernow as an author. He's written a number of them, but Alexander Hamilton and Benjamin Franklin and Washington and a little bit later, Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, I read his biography. These guys are badasses. Like,
yes, they are.
As someone who was quite worried about post-pandemic and recession constantly, and being an entrepreneur and what's happening with the political divide and what's happening with media and how polarized everything feels in geopolitical and environment and all this stuff, the greatest thing I've done is spent the last year looking back at the 1700s and the 1800s to realize that this has all happened before. Like this has happened time and time and time again. And if anyone thinks that we are in a bad place today, we are not. Let's go back to like polio epidemics, and let's go back to like, when people would just randomly pass away at 30 or 35 because they got the flu. So I think we're in a pretty good space, man.
Yeah, it's just different headaches. But yeah, you're right. We're in a good space, so we need to learn from it. And kudos to you for doing that. I think who was it? Andrew Jackson? Was he the one that was walking around with a slug in him? Like he was in a
Andrew Jackson, the president,
yeah, I think so.
The racist president who was I think he was post Lincoln, pre Grant. Is that correct?
I don't know if it was him or Johnson. I don't remember which one it was, but one of the early presidents was walking around.
Been shot.
He was shot, and he still had the shot in him, and it got super infected, and he was always grumpy because of it. And
listen, Washington had no teeth because he was losing it really, really, really early, and no one in his family really lived past 40. His dad passed away in his 30s. His brother passed away in his 30s. His like
Yeah.
people just had a habit of passing away. But all that aside, let's get back to some of the idea around these campaigns. And so how do we customize the messages? Like, am I like spending time creating a client list, creating, first name, last name, or pulling this into my database? Am I creating a standard message with just an ad lib style, like change an adjective here or there, or am I writing custom notes, or how am I doing this at scale?
All of the above. If you want to like do a bulk upload, you send us the address information, and then you can include a ad lib message, but that ad lib could have 7 points of customization. So, dear Mark, comma, thank you for having me on your podcast, comma, podcast name. You know what I mean? And then I really enjoyed talking with you about, comma, conversation point. You know what I mean? So it can start very structured, and then you could quickly veer off. On our website, if you're doing a one-off note, of course, like everybody else these days, we have AI. So you can say, write a note to Mark thanking him for being on my podcast. It'll write the whole note for you. And you can edit it and then send it. So it's one-off, but it's at scale because it takes 2 seconds to do. So then in addition to those, we also have a birthday card system or an anniversary card, which could be a home anniversary to stick with the real estate theme, or car anniversary to stick with the automotive theme. We can create a templated message for events and then just send those at periodic times. Or we have a multi-step system, same thing, right? 5 templated messages, and then put somebody in the campaign. So whenever I add somebody to the campaign, the first day they get message 1, 2 weeks later they get message 2, and then 3 weeks after that I put another person in the campaign. So they get message 1, and then 2 weeks later they get message 2. So there's a lot of ways to do that. I mean, we also integrate with Zapier and Make and these other low-code, no-code platforms, and people can actually use ChatGPT there. I wouldn't trust it, but you could do it to say.
So you could potentially do like an Otter, like voice to text.
Correct.
And then take that over here through this, and then take it over there through that, and off you go.
Yep, exactly. Hey, I so enjoyed our conversation, and then pull in the Otter, and then have ChatGPT summarize it more, and then you could do all that stuff.
So you mentioned the piano tuner. I know we've talked a little bit about real estate, but I imagine this can work for any salesperson, any account-based organization.
Yeah.
So what's kind of the sweet spot? What's too small to really throw through your system, and what's too big? And don't say nothing's too big, because like what's the sweet spot here? Yeah.
So too small, we really don't have it too small. You can go online and send 1 card. Too big, if you were to send us 10,000 plus cards. I mean, our daily capacity is 20,000, but
you can put up 20,000 cards on 170 robots.
Yeah, about.
That is really cool.
So, but if you're to send us 10,000, it's going to take a few extra days because you're eating. We can't just devote everything to you. So people need to understand there's. This is a manufactured product. First, we got to print the card, then we got to write it, then we got to stuff it, et cetera. So there is an upper bound there, but we'll work with you to get them out over time. And then as far as other use cases, we do a lot of win back. So for instance, we work with a meal box snack company. They send snacks to your office. When they screw up, they send you another box of snacks and swag and a handwritten note in there from us saying, we're so sorry we screwed up. What they found from that was those, and granted the swag helps, but what they found from that was those that had the poor experience in the win back actually had a higher lifetime value than never being screwed up with in the first place.
Yeah, I imagine.
So then what did they do? Screw up with everybody, raise all boats. So that's what they did there.
Hold on, did they really do that? Did they really do that? They purposely made a mistake. They sent the win back. I've heard strategies where people so the card's going to come from Brenda, and for my listeners, I'm doing air quotes here, Brenda,
right.
And to say things like I am so sorry that this went out this way. Here was X issue, Y issue. We're taking care of it. We were, making Brenda the one who's like, I was having a rough day, personalize it a bit more. Do you guys see that kind of stuff happening too?
Yeah, absolutely. We do that. By and large, our our campaigns are thank you notes. I'm not, that's, I'd say we're a thank you company. We're a gratitude company because that's so important. And then, ironically, it's a thank you note, but one of our largest verticals is end of life care for pets. So if you have a veterinarian come to your house and put down your dog or cat, you'll receive a handwritten note, fully custom, because they go into their iPad app and they sit there and type it all out. But it's written through us, but it's been fully customized to the experience you had with your pet. And that's actually one of our largest clients. We also work with solar panel installers that use us for prospecting. What they'll do is they'll put a dot on the map, use the real estate prospecting tool to circle it, and then they'll send all those people in a quote unquote, air quotes, apology note for disturbing your neighborhood when what they're really doing is prospecting. So we do those. It's kind of everything in between. We have another pet brand that sends you a little birthday hat on your pet's birthday. And it says, take a picture of this and post it to Twitter or X or Instagram. And we'd appreciate that. And a lot of people do that. So it's all sorts of crazy use cases.
That is so much fun. Okay, so final question for you. And I've been speaking with David Wachs, who is the founder and I think CEO of Handwrytten.
Yep.
And so what is it that we really don't understand? No one understands all, the press and articles you're in, the prospects you're talking to.
Yeah.
The question that you have to answer time and time and time again, what is it that we really should know about this that we don't?
Well, I think a lot of people think it's fakery and either will look fake or, it's insincere. And I can kind of nip that in the bud in two directions. Does it look fake? I say that's up to you. Visit handwrytten.com and request samples. Just go to click business, hit samples there, or we have all these verticals you can click on and get samples. That's what I'd say there. What I would say with, is it insincere? I'd say no more so than in the 1960s when you would write into the CEO of IBM and you'd get a note back. Was that really written by the CEO of IBM or TWA Airlines or, Air Canada or whatever? No, it was written by their secretary. Maybe they signed it with the CEO's signature, but it's no different there. And then in the States, a lot of people, depending on which side of the aisle you're on, you'll get a Christmas card from the president. Do you really think the president sat down and penned out a Christmas or even signed a Christmas card for you? Of course not. But people still hold those in high regard. I think what it is about doing something different and taking the time to think about doing something different that really matters and resonates with people.
Okay, here are the 3 secrets I learned from speaking with David Wachs. Let's get into the 3-point roundup. Number 1, of course, personalization matters. Of course, a handwritten note is way more valued, that's mailed out is way more valued than an email or a text. But I was actually pretty blown away by the fact that they have this lasting impact, that often people are keeping or cherishing these handwritten cards so much more than any kind of digital thing. I've actually kept the handwritten cards. They do mean so much more. Number 2, the importance of establishing customer loyalty. The fact that these personal little touches, like a handwritten card, like a personal message, like something that feels authentic and feels real because it comes from you, these little touches are impossible to be able to build an attribution model, to be able to prove I've sent X cards, I've gotten Y results. And yet, we know that they can significantly enhance customer loyalty and engagement, and they will often lead to repeat business and referrals. And I think in today's age, in today's world, where people focus so much on every dollar spent returning multiples back in a very short window, I think there's an opportunity here for us to leverage way more of these old school, super cool, super personal, non-scalable techniques. And if anything, Handwrytten, I guess, kind of makes it easy to scale these things. And maybe that's the future. The future is this combination of really old school personalization, where technology helps you go from, sending 5 or 10 cards per day to maybe 100, but not tipping the scale to the point where it's inauthentic or it's fake or any of that stuff. And lesson number 3, these personalized touches, like a handwritten card, allow you to cut through the noise of digital communications. I know I keep coming back to that, but I don't want us to cast it aside. because that's huge. Like, that's the very purpose, the very reason for doing this. So much time, so much money, so many strategists. I've been in so many conversations with some of the brightest minds where we are looking for ways to capture people's attention and stop the scroll, and what ad is going to work, and what platform is best, and what's the cheapest form of attention, and how do we get people's attention, and we're in the attention economy. And yet you write a handwritten note, you mail it out, they get the envelope, they open it, you have their attention. It cuts through the noise. So let's not cast that aside. And so there you have it. Those were my 3 lessons from this talk. I want to know what yours was. What do you love? What do you hate? What do you agree with me with? I mean, of course, agree with me, but what do you disagree with me about? Why don't you head over to LinkedIn? My name is Mark Drager. I'm the black and white photo with the little blue background. Go ahead and drop me a DM and let me know what you think about this talk. And while you're over on LinkedIn, be sure to connect with David Wachs. His last name is spelled Wachs. And you can also check out his website, Handwrytten. That's HANDWRYTTEN.com. And one last thing, if you made it this far into the show, you really should subscribe. And here's why. Every single week, I share practical strategies and tips, just like what David shared with us today, to supercharge your business growth and to boost sales. With that, I am Mark Drager. I will catch you in the next episode.